I think the hardest thing about creating something is a lot of people are going to tell you it's a terrible idea, and somehow you've got to find a way to keep going. Sharing a new design or idea for a watch online is brutal. It's one of the most vulnerable things as a designer you can do. And if you're not careful, and if you take everything to heart, you will give up. People say things like, the watch market is too saturated, your design isn't unique enough, it's the most boring watch I've ever laid eyes on, you are going to lose all of your money, and the first thing that goes through your head is, what if they're right? But then you think, well, what if they're not? Now, the watch market is a $78 billion industry, and it's still growing. Now, most of that 78 billion goes to the luxury watch brands, which are the Rolexes, the Patek Philippe's, the Vacheron Constantines of the world, high horology. And around 10 billion of that goes to the mid-range brands, so that is like Omega, Grand Seiko and Longines. And then the rest is basically for micro watch brands and fashion watches. Now, a micro brand watch and a fashion watch are not the same thing. Let's say you pay around $500 for a fashion watch. Around 50% of that is going to be going into marketing and branding. Then they usually pay around 20% for the retail spaces and logistics. And then let's say that they have about 10% of profit. That means that for a $500 watch, you're only getting about $100 worth of product. Now, a micro brand, on the other hand, doesn't have to pay retailers to stock their watches. And they don't have these massive budgets like the fashion brands for big branding and marketing campaigns. Which means they can still make a small profit, but 50 to 60% of the money that you pay is going straight onto your wrist. There are so many things and decisions that come together to make a watch what it is, and they're all kind of linked together in some way. For example, let's say you want a watch that's under 10 millimeters in height. You can do that, but the movement, the handstack of that movement, and the watch case and the sapphire glass need to equal less than 10 millimeters, otherwise it's impossible. And the sapphire glass thickness, for example, is linked to how water resistant the watch is. So the thicker the glass, the more water resistant your watch can be because it can withstand more pressure. So you can have a thinner glass, but it means that your watch will probably only be around 50 meters water resistance. And the bare minimum for an everyday sports watch is expected to be around 100 meters just to be extra safe. And this is one of the hundreds of decisions that you have to make when designing a watch. Now, the Evermont Scott brand has actually been around since around 2016, and we actually got a lot of pre-orders both through our website and our Indiegogo page when we first launched. But a few days into the campaign, the supplier we were working with tried to change the goalposts, meaning that we would either have to charge the customers who'd bought a watch more or reduce the quality of the watch that we promised. And I wasn't going to let either of those things happen. So I decided to refund everyone, and I basically lost everything. Now, that really hurt me at the time and the business, but it didn't hurt the brand. I'd lost everything financially, but I still had the trust of everyone who'd bought a watch back then. And I knew that it was just a matter of time until I could try again. So when I was trying to figure out what the story behind the new watch should be, I realized it had literally been there in front of me the entire time. And I wanted to create a design language and a watch that celebrated the people that, regardless of what the world throws at them, they always try to do the right thing, and the pressure doesn't break them, it defines them. Like how pressures used to make a diamond more resilient, I wanted the dial design to tell the same story about the person wearing the watch. And there's this incredible dial decoration technique called high pressure stamping, which can create highly detailed textures and patterns on the dial surface, and unlike engraving, the result is much sharper and the light interacts with the dial in a very unpredictable but uniquely beautiful way. I knew that this technique had to be the center of the dial design, but what about the rest of the dial?